Karen sent a patrol to my ranch. They saluted when they realized who I was. They say a man's ranch is his kingdom, unless a clipboard queen decides otherwise. My name is Colton Reese. I own 160 acres on the western edge of Rockvale County, Texas. Moved out here after 22 years of federal service, some of it public, most of it not. I don't wear the uniform anymore, but I still stand like I do. Still wake up at all 500. Still know how to secure a perimeter without a drone. This land was my retirement, my peace, until she moved in next door, Karen Whitmore. HOA president without a legal HOA. Armed with laminated rulebooks, she wrote herself and a crew of rent-a-cops she called community enforcement volunteers. She told me I was violating subdivision tone with my livestock, my gravel road, my military flags. I told her she was violating my property lines. She smiled. 2 weeks later, she sent a patrol to my gate, and that's when everything changed. They came just before noon, uninvited and puffed up like they owned the dust beneath their boots. 2 white SUVs with amber lights and magnetic stickers that read Glen Ridge Community Safety Patrol rolled up to my ranch gate like they were hunting a fugitive. 5 men climbed out in tan tactical pants, matching polo shirts, and mirrored sunglasses, all looking like mall cops with an attitude problem. And behind them Karen, clipboard in hand, hair sprayed solid, smirk loaded. I didn't say a word, didn't need to, because before one of them could take another step, the youngest of the 5 froze mid-stride, narrowed his eyes at me standing by the fence post, and whispered something to the others. Then I heard it. Sir, just like that, everything shifted. But let me back up, because folks always think the climax is the story. But the fire doesn't start at the explosion. It starts with a spark. I moved to Rockvale after 22 years in federal logistics and field intelligence. My record isn't on Google, and I prefer it that way. What I can tell you is this: I was the guy who ran operations before they had names. Quiet missions, rural theaters. I spent more time in barns, safe houses, and dusty roads than I ever did behind a desk. After all that, I didn't want a mansion. I wanted space, peace. So I bought 160 acres that had belonged to a retired rancher named Macklin, who left the gate unlocked and a Bible on the porch. I built a new house on the West Ridge. Nothing fancy wood siding, wraparound porch, tin roof that sings in the rain. It's just me and my dog, Boone, German Shepherd, 6 years old, smarter than most politicians I've met. For 8 months, life was perfect, until the developer sold off parcels east of my line to build Glenridge Valley Estates. And with it came Karen. She came walking down my long dirt road one afternoon like she was inspecting the perimeter of a military base. She didn't introduce herself, just squinted up at my American flag, fluttering above the barn, and frowned. "You realize that violates Visual Code G7, she said. I stared at her. "No, ma'am," I replied. "It doesn't." She sniffed. "The HOA forbids external flagpoles above 12 feet. You don't have jurisdiction here." She raised an eyebrow. "This property falls within our extended community overlay." We filed paperwork. I chuckled. "You filed trash with the county clerk. This land was homesteaded in 1946 and isn't under HOA authority. The previous owner made sure of that." She made a note on her clipboard. I added, "You can write all you want, but this ain't your land." She smiled. "The kind that says we'll see." The next week, I got a printed warning in my mailbox: "Unapproved structure outbuilding visible from community entrance. Please submit retroactive approval request to Glenridge HOA." The outbuilding was my barn, the barn that had been standing since Truman was in office. I ignored it. A few days later, Boone found a flyer tossed near the porch. "Keeping Glenridge beautiful starts with you." It had a big red X over a silhouette of a pickup truck and a fence. I tossed it in the fire pit, but it didn't stop there. Neighbors started calling. An older couple 2 parcels over got a compliance visit about their chicken coop. A Vietnam vet named Ray was cited for unauthorized military memorabilia, his garage mural of his old unit. Karen was building her own fiefdom, one clipboard at a time. I confronted her at the so-called community meeting she held in the Glenridge Park Pavilion. Showed up in jeans and boots, sat in the back, listened while she rambled on about preserving property values, aesthetic harmony, and non-compliant residents. Then I raised my hand. She blinked. Yes, Mr. Colton Reese, I said, owner of parcel 247B. The ranch to the west? She visibly tensed. You've received multiple notices and ignored them. I said, because they aren't legal. A few people shifted in their folding chairs. I held up a packet. I've got deed records, county filings, and maps. My land isn't under your authority. You know that. Karen smiled. That's your interpretation. No, that's the law. She tilted her head. Then why don't we let the courts decide? I stood. You're welcome to try. But if you set foot on my land again, or send anyone who does, you'll answer to more than a cease and desist. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, no. Not yet. Not until what came next. 3 days later, I caught them on camera. 2 SUVs idling near the back gate at dusk. Men getting out, flashlights scanning. One took photos. Another tried the lock. Boone growled so loud it shook the windows. I stepped outside with a 12 gauge and shouted, "You boys lost." They scrambled back into their trucks and peeled off. Tires spinning. I called the sheriff. Deputy Ramirez came out. Good guy. Quiet. Knows me from my days with the feds. He reviewed the footage. Whistled low. That's a patrol unit. Unmarked, but registered to a local security firm. Not law enforcement. Karen sent them. I said. He didn't argue. He took a photo of the license plate. I'll run it. But Colton, this is starting to look organized. I nodded. She's testing boundaries. Next time she'll cross one. And she did. Which brings us back to that noon patrol. 5 men, 2 SUVs, and Karen, marching up my ranch road like she was leading a cavalry charge. I was waiting. Arms crossed. Boone at my side. One of them reached for his belt, then stopped. His eyes locked on mine. His face paled. And he muttered the word that would unravel everything. Sir, the word didn't echo. It landed. Sir, one of the 5 so-called community patrolmen stood still. Eyes locked on mine. He didn't blink. Didn't move. Just said it with the reflex of a man who's been trained to respond a certain way to someone he knows outranks him. Karen didn't catch it right away. She stomped up beside them, still clutching her clipboard like it was a sword. This property has failed to comply with multiple Glenridge overlay ordinances. We are executing a compliance inspection under Residential Beautification Code. That'll do. Karen, I cut in, voice low and sharp. She flinched. I turned to the patrolman. Names. Now. Silence. I stepped closer. My tone didn't rise. I didn't need it to. I said, names, agency, credentials. The first guy, the one who'd called me sir, shifted nervously. Mike Denner. We're contracted through Central Shield. Private. Boone took a step forward, hackles up, eyes never leaving the man's left hip. Denner swallowed hard. We were just told this was a visual disturbance call. On private land, I asked. Armed unlawful entry plan. Look, we didn't know. You didn't ask. That's when the second guy saw the badge clipped discreetly to my belt. He froze. Karen finally noticed the shift. What's wrong with you? She barked. You're here under my orders. No, ma'am, I said, slowly turning my full frame to face her. They're not, and neither are you. The problem with fake power is it only works until someone real shows up. And the badge on my hip. It wasn't decorative. Technically, I'm retired, but certain designations don't expire. Mine falls under a federal code known internally as RFO Retained Federal Operations. I don't carry a gun in public. I don't run raids. But if a situation arises involving unlawful threats against national or protected assets, including rural infrastructure, communications, and yes, even homeland properties, I can step in. And Karen, she just trespassed into all 3. Karen Whitmore, I said clearly. so the body cam on the lead patrolman would pick it up. You are currently in violation of Texas Penal Code 30.05 criminal trespass and federal codes relating to the impersonation of lawful authority. You can't be serious, she snapped, eyes darting. You impersonated enforcement, I continued, filed fraudulent notices, organized private armed patrols, and attempted forced entry onto a property protected under federal civilian classification. Her voice cracked. I was protecting the neighborhood. You were building a shadow government, I said, one that never existed. I turned to Denner. You boys have 5 minutes to be off this property. You're lucky I'm not filing interference charges. Yet, he nodded, fast. Yep, sir. Right away. They loaded up like lightning. Karen stood there frozen, clipboard trembling. You think this is over, she hissed. No, ma'am, I said, stepping closer. It hasn't even begun. Later that afternoon, I got the full file from Deputy Ramirez. The security company Karen hired Central Shield Enforcement had been cited 3 times in other counties for operating under community authority when no legal HOA existed. One had an open investigation pending for false detainment of a contractor in Travis County. Karen had signed their contract under a fake legal entity, Glenridge Civic Stability Trust. Not registered, not chartered, not real, but she'd mailed over 80 violation letters, filed complaints, tried to enter homes, and built a digital map of non-compliant households. She wasn't just power tripping. She was running a domestic intimidation campaign. I didn't go to war in uniform this time. I went to court with a copy of every letter she sent, body cam footage, my deed, witness affidavits from the patrolmen themselves, 2 of whom reached out and admitted they'd been duped into thinking Glenridge was a legitimate chartered authority. My federal badge never left the folder. Didn't have to. The judge looked at the documents for 5 minutes and granted a temporary restraining order, barring Karen from initiating any further enforcement activity of any kind within Rockville County. But we weren't done, because now I knew this wasn't just one woman. Tomas Ramos reached out that evening. He runs a civil liberties watchdog group for HOA fraud cases. When I told him what happened, he didn't even flinch. We've got 15 more like her. Colton, he said, but you're the first one with classified credentials to shut it down from the inside. You want me to help? We want to launch a case study, a statewide crackdown. You in, I thought of the patrol cars. Boone growling, Karen screaming about community beautification while holding a forged ordinance. I nodded. Let's clean this up. For good. That night, Ruthie brought over a pie. She smiled when I told her the patrol backed off. You didn't even raise your voice, she laughed. Didn't need to. I said, what did they call you? I smiled. Sir, they say some storms clear the sky, but with Karen, the clouds only shifted. The patrol incident should have ended it. Most people would have backed off after being ordered off federal property, caught on body cam, and hit with a court order. But Karen, she didn't fold. She pivoted. 3 days later, I drove into town and spotted new signs planted near the Glenridge entrance. Glenridge Heritage Community, upholding values. Since 2023, report all unauthorized activity to Community Compliance Hotline. Preserve, protect, prosper, new name, new slogan, same garbage. Ruthie called that evening. She's got a new group, Glenridge Heritage Council. Says it's a civic initiative now, not an HOA. She's laundering power, I said flatly. Changing the costume, not the character. I overheard her at the post office. Said she's going after the cowboy. Said you embarrassed her on federal footage, and now it's personal. Good. I replied, now it's personal for me too. Thomas and I got to work. His nonprofit, Civic Shield Alliance, specialized in uncovering fraudulent HOA activity. They'd been tracking Karen types for years, most of them exploiting weak county oversight or non-existent enforcement mechanisms. And now, with my case, we had something rare, video proof of impersonation. Documents linking Karen to shell companies, first-hand witness reports, and a federally registered landowner with retained operational clearance. Translation: we weren't just going to stop her. We were going to take her whole system down brick by brick. We started digging. Karen had filed 6 separate business names since moving into Glenridge, all nonprofits, none of them properly registered. One was named Community Harmony Corps, another, American Property Defense Network. She used them to send letters with legal-sounding headers, but it got worse. One of her LLCs had a payment platform connected to a bank account receiving monthly compliance dues. From 17 neighbors, she'd conned nearly 20 families into paying $84 or $120 a month for fake services. Most thought it was optional HOA stuff, but it wasn't optional. Karen had threatened them into it. If you don't pay, one email read, we will escalate to county-level lien recommendations. No such process exists. It was extortion, and it had a paper trail. I met with the families, quietly, one by one. Some were angry. Some were embarrassed. One elderly couple cried. She told us if we didn't comply, we'd be denied emergency response support, the husband whispered. She even made us repaint the porch, the wife said, and fined us for the wrong wind chime. I brought it all to the county attorney. He was stunned. You're saying she built a shell enforcement network, using fake laws with volunteer muscle and scare tactics. I confirmed, and she sent armed patrol to a federal landholder. He read the files again, then looked at me. Colton, this could go all the way to the AG's office. That's the plan. By week's end, the county issued a civil injunction blocking Karen's new Heritage Council from conducting any neighborhood oversight, collections, or public policy enforcement activity. Karen held a town press meeting on her lawn to fight back, dressed in red, white, and blue, holding the Constitution in one hand and a microphone in the other. This is about freedom, she bellowed. This is about American values. This is about protecting our homes from rogue outsiders who hide behind badges. That clip made it to a local news segment titled Fake HOA or Heroic Leader. The public backlash was immediate. Comments lit up. Wait, is she charging people? She's faking a HOA in a town that doesn't have one. Why is she talking about protecting values when she forged documents? The tide was turning, and it was about to crest. That weekend, Tomas launched a website, www.karenfiles.org, not just about our Karen, about all of them. Fake HOAs, illegal patrols, forged fines, real consequences. We posted her letters, her flyers, a redacted version of the contract with the shady security firm. The site got 50,000 hits in the first 24 hours. Then the Attorney General's office reached out. Karen's attorney, some guy who called himself a constitutional purist, threatened to sue me for defamation. He sent a cease and desist letter. I framed it and hung it in the barn. That same day, the AG's office filed formal charges: fraudulent misrepresentation, criminal trespass via proxy, attempted unlawful lien threats, operating a false enforcement body, solicitation under fraudulent pretense. She was arrested in front of her house, still wearing that red, white, blue scarf, the same one she wore when she tried to take Boone from me, claiming he was visually aggressive. When they cuffed her, she shouted, "This isn't over. You'll all regret this. I was the order." But her neighbors didn't protest. They watched from their driveways. Some nodded. One clapped. By sundown, Karen's empire had collapsed. The websites shut down. The patrols disbanded. The dues refunded. And the people, they finally started talking again. One man said, "I forgot what it felt like to mow my lawn without being watched." Another said, "We let her control us." All because she spoke with confidence. Me, I just went back to the barn, tuned Boone's collar, hung my hat, and watched the sun fall behind the western pasture. Because justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it wears boots. Karen always thought people feared her. Turns out, they just didn't know how to say no, until someone else did. By the time she spent her third night in county holding, the Glenridge development looked nothing like the place she tried to build. Her laminated flyers were gone, her yard signs were pulled, and her so-called community compliance hotline had been rerouted to a pizza shop in Dallas, after the telecom provider canceled her VoIP line for impersonating government business. But what surprised me wasn't the collapse of her scheme. It was what happened after. I was walking the fence line with Boone one morning when I saw a group of neighbors standing at the edge of the road. 4 of them. 2 I recognized from Karen's little rallies. One was the woman she'd once named as decoratively non-conforming for hanging a bird feeder. "Colton," the man said. His name was Greg. "You got a minute?" I nodded. He removed his ball cap. "We want to apologize." I waited. He looked at the ground. "We didn't know how deep it went. We thought she was just annoying, not dangerous. She had a way of making you feel like it was for the greater good," said the woman beside him. "Like if we didn't follow along, we were the problem." Boone sniffed the man's boots, then sat. I softened. "You didn't create her, but you did give her room." They nodded. Greg took a breath. "We're hoping to fix that." That afternoon, Glenridge residents held their first real meeting. No HOA rules, no fake bylaws, no clipboards, just people talking. I didn't say much, sat in the back, watched, until someone asked, "Should we elect new leadership?" Ruthie stood and said, "Why don't we build something different instead? No fines, no threats, just neighbor to neighbor." That got the loudest applause of the day. A week later, I met with the Attorney General's office. They were opening a statewide task force targeting unregulated HOA abuse, fraudulent enforcement, and fake patrols. They asked me to consult. Quietly, "You're a unicorn," the lead investigator said. "A federal operative who caught the con in real time and had the receipts." "You want a playbook?" I asked. "We want prevention, before another Karen builds an empire of fear." I agreed, and I asked them for one thing. Don't just fine her. Educate the people she tricked. Karen's sentencing was short and stiff. 6 counts, 2 years probation, restitution to every Glenridge resident who paid her a dime, banned from starting or leading any community initiative in the state for 5 years. She left the courthouse without a word. The same way she walked onto my ranch the first time, entitled, but utterly alone. I figured that was the end. But one final twist was waiting. A month later, I got a call from a man with a deep southern drawl. "Colton Reese," he asked. "Speaking." "This is Captain Leroy Thomas, retired Texas Rangers. Heard you shut down a full HOA militia out near Rockvale." "Wasn't a militia, just a woman with a God complex." "Same thing these days," he said, chuckling. "Listen, we're building a training seminar for county officials, town boards, teaching them how to spot fake authority before it spreads. And you want me to speak?" He paused. "You ever thought about wearing the badge again?" I looked out the window at Boone curled under the porch swing, snoring. "Not full time." I said, "But I'll teach, I'll train, and I'll keep the gate locked. That's all we need." Back in Glenridge, things changed for good. They turned the old HOA mailbox stand into a community pantry. The sign that once read, "Violations will be issued now," read, "Need help. Take what you need. Got extra, leave what you can." They planted trees along the road where her patrol once parked, built a picnic area where her fake council held hearings. Kids now played where her signs used to warn. "No unregistered ball games," Ruthie told me one afternoon. "It's weird. What is I don't feel like I'm being watched anymore." I smiled. "That's because the wrong people lost the power. I still wake early, still walk the fence line with Boone, still keep the badge locked away in a drawer just close enough. And sometimes, and when the sun's rising just right, I can see my father's boots in the dirt, hear his voice reminding me, land gives you peace. Son, but you better be ready to protect it. I am. Always will be. The best fences don't keep people out. They keep the peace in." That's what my father used to say. He meant it literally: cattle, dogs, coyotes. But now, years later, after everything with Karen, I understand that line cut deeper than just wire and cedar posts. Because sometimes, peace isn't something you find. It's something you defend. Karen didn't stick around Rockvale after sentencing. Word was she tried to move into another development near Waco, but the local news had picked up the story by then. Fake HOA president arrested for building illegal security network. Rancher with federal clearance unmasks. HOA scam from clipboards to courtrooms. The collapse of Karen Whitmore. She was done. In Texas, at least. But the impact of what she built that had to be undone one person at a time. I started hosting monthly talks, just small ones at first. We met in the feed store after hours. I'd bring a thermos of coffee. Tomas would bring his laptop. Ruthie baked biscuits. We called it the Line Talks. At first, it was just Glenridge folks. Then people from 3 counties out showed up. One man drove from Oklahoma, said his HOA tried to fine him $3,000 for painting his fence the wrong shade of gray. The talks weren't just about legal documents or loopholes. They were about power and how easily people give it away when they're scared. You can't stop a Karen by arguing with her clipboard, I told them. You stop her by knowing your rights, standing your ground, and never mistaking noise for law. By summer, the county commission passed what they called the Rockvale Integrity Ordinance. All community governance groups had to register transparently with the county. No entity could issue fines without court-verified authority. All patrol activity required coordination with the sheriff's office, no exceptions. They even used my footage from the day the fake patrol showed up at my ranch as training material for new rural deputies. Sheriff Mendez called it the wake-up call we didn't know we needed. Then came the letter. It arrived in a plain envelope with no return address, taped, not sealed. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You never raised your voice. You never threatened me. You didn't have to, because real authority doesn't shout. I hope someday I'll understand what made me act the way I did. Until then, I won't forget what you taught me. No signature, but it didn't need one. I burned it in the fireplace that night and slept easier. 6 months later, I stood in front of the state legislature, not in uniform, just in boots, jeans, and a collared shirt. Behind me sat victims from across the state: farmers, veterans, retirees, single moms, all blindsided by fake HOAs, illegal fines, and threats that carried the weight of nothing but loudness and fear. I told them the truth. Karen didn't have a badge. She didn't have a gun. All she had was a voice and the confidence that nobody would call her bluff. What scares me isn't that she tried. It's how close she came to getting away with it. The state passed the Community Oversight Protection Act 2 weeks later. It created the first ever statewide public HOA database, gave counties more power to shut down fake governance, and made it a felony to impersonate a code officer or file fraudulent citations. They named the first clause of the bill the Reese Amendment. I didn't ask for that, but I appreciated the respect. Glenridge changed after all that. Not overnight, but the fear left. People started living again without second-guessing every flower pot or flagpole. The community garden grew. Boone got older, slower, but still stood when a truck came up the road. And me, I still woke early, still walked the fence line, still nodded to the rising sun like it was checking in on me. The last time I spoke at a line talk, someone asked me, "What made you stay calm that day when she brought those men to your gate?" I smiled, because I didn't need to prove who I was. I already knew. Have you ever felt powerless against someone loud, someone who made up rules and expected you to follow? Tell your story, speak up, stand your ground, because real authority doesn't hide behind paperwork. It stands quietly, firmly, and knows where the line is drawn. And sometimes it's a rancher with a badge no one sees, until the moment it matters.